In the small town of Umuohia, there lived a young maiden named Florence. She was known throughout the village for her beauty, her curves that made every man turn his head, and her skill in the kitchen. When she entered a room, you could not ignore her. Her waist was slim, her hips wide, and her face, oh, her face, was something men dreamed about. But it wasn't just her looks that got her noticed. Florence could cook. Her jollof rice was said to be the best in the whole town. People would travel for miles just to taste it. She was the talk of Umuohia. Florence didn't come from a wealthy family, but she had something better, the ability to make people like her. And she knew how to use it. James was a businessman in Umuohia, well respected by everyone. He ran a small supermarket, and many people relied on him for their daily needs. He had a wife named Clara, who was gentle and soft-spoken. Clara was a good woman, the kind who believed in hard work and honesty. She trusted her husband completely and believed their life together was perfect. But she didn't know that someone, was about to change everything. Florence had noticed James. She had seen him many times when he passed by her shop, and every time, her heart raced. She knew he was married, but that didn't stop her. She had her eyes on him. The moment she set her mind on something, she always got it. And James was going to be no different. One hot afternoon, Florence dished a plate of jollof rice and wrapped it up nicely, deciding to deliver it to his shop herself. It wasn't just food she was offering him, she was offering him a taste of what he had been missing. She walked confidently to the supermarket, her waist swaying with each step. The moment James saw her, his eyes widened in surprise. "Florence. What a pleasant surprise," he said, smiling. "I made some jollof rice, sir," Florence said, looking at him with a soft smile. "I thought you might like to try some." James took the package from her, his fingers brushing hers. "That's so kind of you." "You didn't have to," he said, but his eyes lingered a little too long. Florence smiled again, her eyes never leaving his. "I wanted to," she said, turning to leave. But she wasn't leaving. She was planting the seed. She knew James would think about her again, and that was exactly what she wanted. Over the next few days, Florence made sure to be around whenever she knew James would be. She visited the market often, made sure to walk past his shop, and always wore something that would catch his eye. Clara never suspected a thing. She was busy with her work, running errands, and helping in the house. She trusted James completely, believing that nothing could come between them. One evening, after a long day, Clara sent James a message asking him to pick up some groceries. It was the perfect chance for Florence to make her move. James had just closed his shop when Florence appeared at the door. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice soft and sweet. "I made some fresh chicken stew today. I thought you might like to have some. It's a special recipe, one that's been passed down in my family." James looked at her, surprised. "Florence, you're too kind. You don't have to do all this." But Florence knew exactly what she was doing. She stepped closer, her smile full of warmth, and handed him the container. "It's nothing, sir. I just wanted to share it with you." As she turned to leave, she made sure to glance back at him. "I hope you enjoy it. I'll be around if you need anything." James stood there for a moment, staring after her. There was something different about Florence. She wasn't like other women he knew. She wasn't shy or reserved like Clara. She was bold, confident, and always seemed to know what she wanted. At that moment, James couldn't deny that he was beginning to notice her more and more. That night, after dinner, James tasted the stew. It was delicious, just as Florence's food always was. He couldn't stop himself from thinking about her. Something about the way she looked at him, the way she spoke, made him feel a spark he hadn't felt in a long time. The next time he saw Florence, he didn't wait for her to offer food. He approached her first. "Florence," he said, his voice a little shaky, I've been meaning to ask you something. Would you like to come over to the shop tomorrow? I'll pay you for your time. Florence smiled brightly, knowing that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Of course, sir. I'd love to help you. The following day, Florence showed up at James' shop. It was a quiet morning, and the shop was nearly empty. James gave her a task to help organize some goods at the back, and as she worked, she made sure to get closer to him. She laughed at his jokes, complimented him on how well he had set up the shop, and made sure to touch his arm lightly whenever she passed by him. James found himself laughing more than usual. He was enjoying her company, enjoying the attention she was giving him. As the day went on, he realized that he was looking forward to seeing her again. He was beginning to think of her more than just a friend. One evening, as they stood together outside his shop, James looked at her with new eyes. Florence, I have to admit. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Florence smiled, her heart beating faster. She had planned for this moment, and now it was happening. I've been thinking about you too, James. You're a good man. You deserve someone who can appreciate you. James took a deep breath. He had never thought he would be in this position, but he couldn't deny that Florence had a hold on him now. I'm not sure what's happening between us, but I can't stop thinking about you, he confessed, his voice low. Florence stepped closer to him, her eyes sparkling. You don't have to be confused, James. What we have is real. You know it. I know it. At that moment, Florence took what she wanted. She hugged him gently, and James didn't pull away. It was the beginning of something neither of them could stop. The next day, Clara noticed that things had changed. James was distant, not as attentive as he used to be. He wasn't as eager to spend time with her, and he seemed lost in his thoughts. Clara didn't know what was happening, but she sensed that something wasn't right. She didn't suspect Florence yet, but she felt a nagging feeling in her. Florence, on the other hand, was more confident than ever. She had won James over, and she knew that nothing would take him away from her now. Every time they were together, she felt more and more certain that she had what it took to keep him. She was beautiful, skilled in the kitchen, and now, she had his heart. But the peace wouldn't last. The days passed, and Florence's hold on James grew stronger. She was always there when he needed her, offering help, bringing food, and making him feel special in ways Clara hadn't in a long time. James found himself thinking about Florence constantly. He began to look for excuses to spend more time with her, to be around her. Clara, on the other hand, was completely unaware. She continued to trust her husband, believing their marriage was solid, unaware that there was someone else quietly slipping into the space she had always occupied. One afternoon, Clara came home earlier than usual. She had gone to visit her aunt in the village, but when she arrived, something was different. James was in the living room, sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. When he saw Clara, he quickly put it down. "Welcome home, dear," he said with a forced smile. But Clara noticed the tension in his voice. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. James nodded quickly. "Yes, everything is fine. I was just thinking about some things." Clara looked at him, her heart sinking. She knew him well enough to sense when something wasn't right. "You've been distant lately. Is there someone else?" James froze, the words hanging in the air. For a moment, he considered lying. He could deny everything, pretend it was just stress at work. But something inside him told him that Clara deserved to know the truth, even if the truth would break her heart. "No," he said finally, his voice quiet. "It's not what you think." Clara's face softened with worry. "What do you mean?" "I don't know how to say this," James said, struggling to find the right words. But I've been spending a lot of time with someone else. A woman I met at the market. Her name is Florence. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of Florence before. She knew the girl was young and beautiful, but she hadn't thought much of it. Now, hearing James speak her name, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. "James, please tell me this isn't true," Clara said, her voice shaking. "Tell me it's not what I think." "I don't want to hurt you, Clara," James said, his eyes filled with regret. "But I've been seeing her. I can't stop thinking about her." The words hit Clara like a slap. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. How could James do this to her? How could he betray the trust they had built over all these years? Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "How long has this been going on?" "A few weeks," James admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. "It started with her bringing food to the shop. She was kind, always offering to help. But it became more than that. I started to fall for her." Clara felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. She couldn't breathe. Her whole world seemed to be falling apart. "And you love her?" James didn't answer immediately. He looked at Clara, his face full of pain. "I don't know. I don't know what I feel anymore. But I'm sorry, Clara. I never wanted to hurt you." Clara turned away from him, she was confused. She had never imagined something like this could happen to her. She had always believed in the strength of their love, in the trust they shared. But now, she felt like everything had been a lie. Meanwhile, Florence was at the market, unaware of the storm she had caused. She had been busy with her daily routine, cooking, helping her neighbors, and making sure she kept her distance from the gossipers. She had what she wanted, and nothing was going to take it away from her. That evening, as she walked back to her house, she received a message from James. It was short, but it sent a wave of excitement through her. "I need to see you. Can you meet me tonight?" the message read. Florence smiled to herself, feeling a rush of triumph. She knew what was coming. She had played her cards perfectly, and now she was about to get everything she wanted. She did not doubt in her mind that James would choose her. After all, she was the one who had given him everything Clara couldn't: attention, excitement, and a new sense of purpose. She quickly replied, "I'll be there." That night, she met James at his usual spot, the back corner of the shop. The place was quiet, with only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. James was already waiting for her, and when he saw her, his eyes softened. "I've made up my mind," James said, his voice filled with determination. "I can't go back to Clara. I don't love her anymore. I love you, Florence." Florence felt a surge of victory, but she kept her expression calm. "I knew you would, James. I knew you would choose me." James took a step toward her. "I'm sorry for what I've done, but I can't change my feelings. I want to be with you." Florence smiled. "Then it's settled. We'll be together. No more hiding." And just like that, Florence had taken everything from Clara. The woman who had trusted her husband, who had loved him for years, was now left with nothing. The next few days were strange for James and Florence. Every time they were together, they felt a sense of freedom. But it wasn't just joy that filled the air, it was also fear. They both knew the consequences of what had happened. James had left Clara, and Florence had taken him away from her.